Turning my microphone on, calling to order the regular school board meeting for April 13th, 2022, closed session. Can we do roll call, please?
Board Member Cluth?
Present.
The regular school board meeting for April 13th, 2022, closed session.
Board Member McCall? Vice President Clerk Gardner?
Present.
President Bove LaMonica?
Present.
Board Member Cole is absent. We have a quorum.
Thank you so much, Christine. Seeing opening public comment. Seeing no public comment. Is there anybody on virtual public comment?
We do not have anybody on virtual public comment tonight.
Closing public comment and adjourning to closed session.
Make a note. It's technically audio as well as, Zoom.
Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the regular session of the Hermosa Beach City School District Board Meeting. It is April 13th, 2022. May we start with roll call, please?
Board Member Cluth,
Present.
Board Member McCall,
Present.
Vice President Clerk Gardner,
Present.
President Bove LaMonica.
Present.
Board Member Cole is absent tonight. We have a quorum.
Thank you so much. I'd like to do a report out from closed session. The board met in closed session to pass resolution number 11-2-22 to release 1 temporary employee and 3 long-term substitute employees at the end of the year. The motion was made by Doug Gardner, seconded by Stephen McCall, and the vote was 4-0 in support. I'd also like to report out from from closed session. Jason, off of the 2 pieces with, do those have numbers off of the 2 pieces?
The student numbers?
Yeah.
No, we're not reading student numbers for this.
Do you want me to read out the?
Yeah.
Off of the first piece of settlement, there was a motion made by Doug, seconded by Stephen, with 1 absent and a unanimous vote. Off of the second student discussion, there was a motion made by Quentin, seconded by Stephen, with 1 absent and a unanimous vote. Okay, moving on to the flag salute, please. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you, everyone. Moving on to approval of the agenda.
So moved.
Thank you, Doug. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Quentin. All in favor? Christine?
Board Member Cluth.
Aye.
Board Member McCall,
Aye.
Vice President Clerk Gardner,
Aye.
President Bove LaMonica.
Aye.
All in favor.
Thank you so much. Moving down to announcements.
Yes, tonight we do not have Hermosa Valley students. They will not be presenting. And we do have Hermosa Beach Youth Basketball that is here in order to celebrate their donation to our school.
Great. I'd like to invite the Hermosa Beach Youth Basketball up. Do you mind doing this?
And if we could invite the board down in order to take a picture. Test. I'm dreaming. Hi, everyone. Okay, so in this minimal audience here, we would like to just take an opportunity to thank the Hermosa Beach Youth Basketball. So HBYB is a fantastic partner with Hermosa Beach Schools, and they teach all of our kids how to play basketball. But beyond that, they also use our facilities, and we are proud to partner with them. They're great facility users, right, Paula? And beyond that, I mean, it's very rare that you have a facilities user that also helps the facility itself. So they donated $10,000 in order to repave our blacktops. Opportunity to see it. Peter, I'm telling you, I'm not turning my head. Okay, so if you've not had the opportunity to see it, it looks phenomenal. And they also did the extra additions of, you mean like, again, it's not related to basketball, but like they did the Foursquare courts and the repainting. And so just such great partners, and we're so grateful to you. And just on behalf, we just want to Yeah.
That's little beach basketball.
As a parent of an HBYB athlete, super grateful. Okay, moving on to public comments. Members of the audience may address the board on any topic, regardless of whether it's listed on the agenda. However, the board may not discuss issues raised that are not listed on the agenda. Topics not on the agenda that are brought to the board's attention may be investigated by the administration and a report made to the board either publicly or privately at a future meeting. Comments from visitors shall not exceed 3 minutes per individual speaker unless waived by a majority of all members of the board. Do we have public comment? Seeing no public comment, closing in-person public comment and opening up virtual comment.
We don't have anybody waiting for virtual comment tonight, Maggie.
Closing virtual comment for tonight. And moving to written communications. Are there any communications from the board that the board needs to report out on? Should I just do my list and see what we missed? Okay. Okay, March 10th regarding COVID lawsuit, an email to the board from Victoria Cannon, Rebecca Barrios. On March 12th, access to campus by Rachel Lidoff and Katie Ball to myself. Email to myself on March 26th on Manhattan Beach USD DEI work by Becky Schulten. On March 15th, the amended complaint sent by Victoria Cannon to the board. On 3/26, comments regarding the Cannabis Committee by Carolyn Petty to myself. On 3/29, comments regarding the Cannabis Committee to the board by Carolyn Petty. On 3/31, article regarding the Epoch Times by Rebecca Barrios to the board. On April 4th, a email to myself regarding ESSER funding by Tony Higgins. And on April 6th, email from Carolyn Petty regarding the Cannabis Committee. Did I miss any?
I had a couple of additional ones.
Mhm.
March 10th from Ilana M about COVID. March 21st from Suzanne Evans about the sand dune. And that's it.
I also got the sand dune one. Forgot that. Thank you.
None others. Same.
Great. Closing written communication and moving to the superintendent update. Dr. Johnson.
Thank you, Maggie. Okay. First, I'd like to introduce our new IT coordinator, Aaron Hernandez. Aaron is, you can stand up, Aaron. That'd be nice. Yeah, very good. Yeah. That's good. So thank you, Aaron. I finally got the IT coordinator to wear a suit. You mean like just Simon had to go before that could happen. Simon has moved on to bigger and better things. He had a fantastic job with a corporation. He's gone corporate on us. But we're really excited about Aaron and also Jorge. It's a great new team, and I think that they're going to bring some really phenomenal stuff to us. So thank you for joining us. Next, I was invited to serve on the city's cannabis initiative committee. This was a result of an initiative to legalize the sale of cannabis in Hermosa Beach, which would reverse the city council's ban on the sale of cannabis in Hermosa Beach. There was enough signatures in order to put the initiative on the ballot. And so that will be in the November election. The issue with the initiative is that it does override, you mean like what the city council had already put into place if it were to pass. And there was concerns that were expressed about the language of the initiative itself. And is this the best thing for Hermosa Beach, especially since city council has already spoken against it? The committee was formed with a variety of stakeholders, including Tom Backley from Beach City's Health District. The chief of police was also a participant, as well as various community members. There were 9 meetings. Each meeting was about, I think, 3 hours long. The committee and the city did an enormous amount of work. And it was a very interesting conversation. I personally learned a lot about the cannabis industry and the law itself and our participation. The committee did put forth recommendations based off of a vote of the stakeholders that was submitted to city council last night. City council received the report from the city. However, they were directed to not take action last night in order to provide more survey results that the city is gathering for them. And then they'll provide direction to the city about next steps moving forward. What could that direction be? There's a variety of options that are before the city of Hermosa Beach. One would be to do nothing and to see through the vote, you mean like on whether or not the initiative passes. Another would be to put forth a counter initiative that would legalize cannabis, but the way that the initiative is written would correct some of the issues that people view with the initiative that had enough ballot signatures. So there, another would be to put another initiative on the ballot in order to add a tax or a sales use tax for Hermosa Beach if the initiative did pass. There is a matrix. We don't have it here today, but it is available on the city website, and we can provide it as well too, with the responses from each of the committee members. I did take the position after listening to all the presentations that I do not agree with the legalizing the sale of cannabis in Hermosa Beach based off of the information that we received, and did not agree with establishing another initiative that would legalize cannabis and the sale of cannabis in Hermosa Beach. I and the majority of the committee did agree, though, if an initiative did pass, then it should be taxed, a sales use tax. One thing that was unanimous, I just want to point out that everyone on the committee was in agreement that the current initiative as proposed is bad, and all were against it unanimously. And I also want to credit the city and the cannabis committee for really good discussion and coming to a lot of places of unanimity and recommendation. So I would encourage people to review that matrix. I don't have much more to report because I am curious to see how the city responds to those recommendations, and I'll report to the board once we learn that information. On that, are there any questions?
Any questions on the cannabis committee? Thank you so much for keeping the board abreast of all the information.
Thank you. Next, I want to congratulate Science Olympiad, who did compete at the state level competition. Just to put this in perspective, I mean, like, this is the top 5% of science students in the state. I've joked, but I'm serious. Like, you know, I've been, you know, part of or supervised over many Science Olympiad teams. I mean, like, as an administrator, I've never had a team go to state. Like, that's wild. So Hannah Loth and the volunteers in Hermosa Valley should really be complimented on just the support of these kids. And dang, we have some smart science kids. Like, wow, is what I have to say. So we're going to be recognizing them in May, and we have some certificates, and we want to celebrate them. So we're looking forward to seeing them and Miss Loth then. Next, plug for the Dolphin Dash, April 30th. It's going to be wild. It's going to be out in the community On the beach, they tell me these kids could run anywhere, but it's going to be, it's reinvented. So I'm really excited about it. I'm bringing my family. So I look forward to seeing everyone out there. And it's a great fundraiser to support our PTO, which gives a lot to our schools. And then Hearts of Hermosa right after that. And the next weekend that I'm leaving the kids, but bringing the wife. So on May 7th, it's going to be a good old time, real good old time from what I hear. So buy your tickets now. They're going like hotcakes. That's the word. Our staff continues to participate in staff wellness. We had yoga in March with Renee and Delicato. She did a fantastic job. I participated. I was really good at it. I want that on the record. And then this coming month, we're doing a meditation activity, and I probably need to participate in that. So I'll be sending myself. Next, on a more serious note, we are going to be holding a run, hide, distract parent meeting. There will be an email coming out pretty shortly within the next week, explaining about in the event of an intruder at our schools. We do already have a safety plan, but we want to be more proactive about practicing that safety plan in concert with Hermosa Beach PD. Been working closely with Chief LeBaron, and we're looking to take that next step. We'd like to do it before the end of the year, but we also want to allow our parents to see what that training would look like in order to prepare our staff and our students, grade level appropriate, for the event of an intruder on campus. So look for more information coming to that, and then we'll share with the board. And then finally, Sylvia and I, my date last night, we saw the Star performance, our Star Daycare, The Descendants. I hadn't seen the movie, but I hear this was better. And it was just a fantastic performance. And I really want to just give a shout out to Star. They have really answered. We asked them for enrichment, and they have delivered enrichment and some. This production was amazing. Like lighting, there was they had better sound system than we have here. It was great. So I was just so thoroughly impressed. And I just cannot thank Star enough. And I really just encourage families, like if you're looking for a daycare option, Star is a great option. And the enrichment that they're providing, from foreign language to science to theater production to band, it was all on display last night. So we were really excited and grateful to be there. Thank you. That's all I got.
Any questions?
No questions. I just wanted to, we talk a lot about academic excellence, and I just wanted to put an underline on that fantastic science appearance. My understanding, not having grown up in California, is that is a very hard bar to meet to get there. So kudos to our kids. And my daughter had Hannah Lowe's too, and we just think the world of her. So thank you to the staff and Hannah Lowe's in particular for that.
Thank you.
Okay. Moving on to board reports, please. Doug Gardner.
Thank you. So I attended the most recent HBF PTO general meeting. It was my first one of these. Usually I'm on babysitting duty during these. So it was very exciting to attend the meeting and be given the privilege of listening to all the updates from HBF and PTO. I'll give a quick rundown of the updates, starting with HBF. Starting with annual giving, as of the meeting, which was a few weeks ago, so I'm sure they're more than well on their way to reaching higher to their goal. They were 70% of their way to their $1.2 million goal for annual giving. They've been really targeting those who haven't given at all, trying to up the participation versus necessarily the dollar value. They were at 48% participation as of the meeting, where their goal is 70%. What they raised in annual giving was up 37% at that point, year over year. The focus at that point was also really turning towards Hearts of Hermosa. As Dr. Johnson said, it's coming up on May 7th. Tickets are available now. Get them before they're gone. It should be a great time. It's been a few years since we've had one, so it'll be awesome to get everybody back together up at the community center. Turning to PTO, they are going through some legal things with their bylaws. They've got their DBA because now that we have a third school, they had to change their as known name. And they're re-looking at their budgets to allocate to all 3 schools versus the 2-school site. At that point, and to be honest, I don't know if they filled them because I forgot to ask. They were looking for chairs for the graduation, a co-president, and a spiritware chair for next year. So we highly encourage everyone and anyone who may be interested to get involved with the PTO, volunteer. It's a great group of people, and obviously for a terrific cause. And finally, the Dolphin Dash, as Dr. Johnson said, coming up at the end of the month. Kids running wild on the Strand, should be a great time. Raise some great money. So we look forward to that. I hope to see everybody at that, as well as Hearts of Formosa. Thank you.
Thanks, Doug. So just from board president updates, I was able to attend the Valley School Tour with Principal Bledsoe. Thank you so much for your time and showing myself around campus with all the teachers. It was great to be in the classroom, see the students, see the teachers hard at work. Very gratifying. And I was also able to attend Science Olympiad and took some photos, I think, of different people who had kids in the works. And the enthusiasm and the reverence for science was so gratifying. It was great to see them just spending a whole Saturday just being incredibly excited about the projects that they were working on and the support they were giving each other for their teammates. So thank you to the staff and to the families who made that possible. And lastly, for CSBA, attended a legislative session in Sacramento last week, looking at a variety of bills. There's no updates right now on any of the ones that the board's been tracking. Moving on to superintendent report and board discussion, please. R-48-2122, sense of suicide with Principal Bledsoe.
Hello, hello. Am I too short, too tall? Okay. Just thank you, Dr. Johnson. Thank you, board, for having us here tonight. Cabinet, Dr. Johnson. I brought a surprise guest, Cassie Riley, who's going to co-present with me tonight. And we are fresh off of signs of suicide that took place yesterday. So we're really excited to share with you the data that we feverishly crunched to be prepared for this meeting tonight, and also go through the preparation that occurred prior to rolling out this very important program to our 7th and 8th grade students.
So yes, hi, I'm Cassie Riley, and the school counselor at Hermosa Valley. Thank you for having me. So firstly, why does this matter? And I think the most important thing is that we're seeing depression and suicide on the rise for our teens and our youth in the country. So currently, suicide is the 2nd leading cause of death for teenagers in the US. Sorry. And so currently, suicide is the 2nd leading cause of death for adolescents and teens in the US. Although we're seeing other causes of death, especially accidents, decreasing, suicide is actually on the rise.
You're doing a great job. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I'm too short.
I think we're the same. Okay. So the development of SOS, the adoption of the curriculum of SOS, was preceded by Assembly Bill 2246, which asked school districts to provide a comprehensive prevention, intervention, and postvention suicide program to students. Most K-12 public schools in California had a robust intervention and postvention process in terms of things like the risk assessment and the follow-up and providing appropriate resources. But what school districts lacked was that prevention piece, and that's the capturing of students prior to them being in crisis. So AB 2246, which really is the governance for us producing this program, it's SOS is the vessel that allows us to be in compliance with this assembly bill. It was the adoption of a prevention program to capture students, explain to them what depression, anxiety looks like, and provide them an opportunity to kind of assess their feelings and assess how they're going through life, and potentially avoid the need for an continued intervention, postvention problem or programs, because the prevention process would be so much more important. Thank you.
So a common myth is that when we talk about suicide, we increase the rates of suicide. The reality is the opposite. When we open the communication and talk to our teens and our young people about suicide and the warning signs and how to get help, we actually reduce suicide attempts. So with SOS and similar programs, they actually report a significant reduction in student-reported suicide attempts following the implementation of the program to fidelity. And actually, SOS is a program that has been run in thousands of schools across the nation for a number of years. So it has a lot of data that backs it up and is a key reason why SOS was chosen for Valley.
And then in addition to that, having the program tried and true also in our South Bay area. So our local schools have also adopted SOS. So it creates that consistency for our schools when we look to that K-12 articulation and things that they're experiencing at Valley, they'll be experiencing at the high schools that they will roll up to. So this is a lot of text. Sorry, Dr. Johnson, but we wanted to throw everything in here because this is really where Cassie and I did the most of our prep. And that was when you're talking about a topic that is this intense, that it impacts the lives of children, you want to make sure that everybody involved is well trained, well informed, and that they have a really good process for what do I do if. So these are just all of the things that we did prior to implementation day to ensure that teachers felt supported, and we went through, provided them with the videos in addition to the forms that students would be filling out ahead of time. Informed parents provided 2 parent opportunities to view the videos and also gain important insight into the program. And then lots of reminders just to ensure that the program was implemented to fidelity. Tonight, we'll be sharing the data with you.
So something that's central to the SOS program is the acronym ACT. And this stands for to acknowledge. So acknowledge signs of depression or suicide when we see them. To care. So let our students know that we care about them and we can help. And then tell. So for students, this will be tell a trusted adult. For our staff, it's going to be tell someone who can help with mental health. So school psychologist, school counselor, and also connecting with outside resources. ACT is something that we want to become part of our school language. And it continued teaching and discussion and visuals regarding ACT to help students to remember to follow the acknowledge, care, and tell process throughout the school year.
Okay, so what did we do? Implementation took place yesterday. Students were those that didn't opt out, as there was a place for students who opted out, but those that received the SOS curriculum were shown 3 different video clips that added to about 25 minutes of content. And the video clips took them through various scenarios related to depression, drug abuse, pulling away from sports, pulling away from friends, reduction in interest in things that they had been interested in the past. And the idea behind the videos is to elicit a feeling of like, hey, that's me, or hey, that's my friend. And so recognizing themselves and the students that are sharing their own stories, in addition to the adults that are sharing what this looks like and defining terms of things they may be feeling but didn't have words for. So we linked 2 forms here. We would like, Christine, if you don't mind, to clicking on the brief screening form. We don't like this, but they call it the Be Sad form. Unfortunately, it might not allow you. That's okay. I brought a paper copy. Okay. So we would like to share some data with you regarding the Be Sad form. But in terms of implementation, we have 2 different forms that students filled out. This green one was anonymous, and we trusted our staff and kind of drilled into the fact that we really wanted this to be anonymous for our students so that they could answer it honestly. And then, so it's an analysis of, have you felt like nothing is fun? Have you had less energy? Things like that. And then once they answer these questions on the back, there's a rating scale of 0 to 2, 3 to 4. that says things like, it's likely that you have depression. You probably have some significant symptoms. Da, 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 da. That's anonymous. Then the non-anonymous form is this blue sheet that says, after watching the video clips, do you want to talk to someone? I want to talk to someone about myself. I want to talk to someone about a friend, or I do not want to talk to someone about myself or a friend. So Cassie's going to share some of that data with you from BSAD.
So on the BSAD, there's two key questions that were kind of primary for us kind of looking at in terms of data. And these questions were, have you thought seriously about killing yourself? And that was question number 4. And question number 5 is, have you ever in your whole life tried to kill yourself or made a suicide attempt? So when we pulled the BSADs, those were like 2 questions that we really kind of wanted to make sure we pulled our data on in terms of numbers. So in my office floor, like this afternoon, we crunched our data. So for students who answered yes to both 4 and 5, we had 6 students. For students who answered yes to just 4, and 4 is thought seriously about killing yourself, we had 9 students. And then we had 6 students who answered that in their whole life, they had made a suicide attempt. In total, that is 21 students who answered yes to either 4 or 5 or both. In addition to that, we had 5 where either one of those questions were left blank.
So I know this data can be a bit jarring when you hear that, especially when reading those questions. The good news is on the self-screening forms, which were sorted very feverishly in order to get to see students. So part of the implementation is any student that marks, I want to talk to someone about myself, we have to get to on day 1. We have to see them and get to them on day 1. So we had 7 students mark, I'd like to speak to someone about myself. We had 2 that were concerned about a friend. We had a staff member that brought a student who was concerned about a student. And then we had 9 with unclear markings that we called in anyway, because we were nervous and wanted to ensure that they were okay. Of that is 19 students that we saw, which is interesting because while we didn't connect the blue and the green, 19 to 21 kind of means we're a bit on par with what we should have been seeing data-wise. Thank you. Oh, this is me too. So we wanted to give you just a really quick rundown of what the crisis team was and what each of these levels looked like. So level 1 were all of these wonderful providers that actually had the credential to do what's called risk assessment and meet individually with students. Cassie did a fantastic job paring down our risk assessment into a screening and then adding a subsequent full-fledged risk assessment that everyone that came to help us on SOS Day was able to use with ease. I do want to call out Janet Allen, school psychologist from Maricosta, came to help us. Shauna Martinez from Beach Cities, Shauna Letvin, who's a licensed clinical social worker from our community in Hermosa, Sue Bertrand, who's our DAS counselor, Denise Bellatini Stern, Troy Boucher, who's our Hermosa Vista counselor, and then of course, the lovely Cassie, all met with students. So they all showed up for our kids that day. And these 19 students and one that walked in confused were serviced by fantastic, wonderful professionals that are all credentialed in the area, and would have been a really challenging day if it were just Cassie there. So we're very grateful for these people and their participation. Go ahead.
So a key protective factor is our schools. Students who are engaged in school and feel connected in school are significantly less likely to engage in suicide attempts. We are more likely to see those kids and they are more likely to come and find us. And so this was really key in kind of our training with our staff, is how we continue to interact with our students in positive ways, how we provide opportunities in school for students to interact and see each other and reach out to each other and build those connections. and also supporting our staff in the language we use with kids to make sure that they know that they are seen and they are heard and they have trusted adults that they can go to.
And I think the last thing to add is really that's been the cornerstone of our counseling program, both at Vista and at Valley, creating those additional trusted adults on campus, creating opportunities for students to be themselves and express themselves and get into things that are of interest to them. And I have to say our 2 counselors are doing an amazing job of working to create that environment for our kids. So this is just another example of us not just checking a box, but making a meaningful experience for students who didn't know they wanted to talk to someone, but then decided that they did. So that is our presentation for you tonight. Thank you so much for allowing us to share. Are there any questions?
Thank you so much for the presentation. Questions from the board?
Thank you very much for the presentation. Can you help me understand the 20? I'm not sure what the denominator is of that, and I don't know kind of if that indicates if that's a high or a low percentage.
That's a great question. So we implemented to 7th and 8th grade students, about 150 in each class, so about 300 students. And of that, 21 anonymously indicated that they've had some pretty serious thoughts, and 19 students were serviced out of that 300. SOS curriculum says you should see about, in your first implementation, you should see from 10 to 12%. So Valley is actually below the average. And when we were talking and debriefing about that, it's likely because we have a smaller cohort of kids than the traditional middle school, 7th and 8th grade. And with a higher denominator, you would get a higher response rate. But we are healthier than the data would suggest. The data suggests.
Yeah, I hope that's the case, right? That it wasn't that we're missing them; it's that there's fewer kids at risk. That's fantastic.
Yeah.
Please.
I just want to add something that following our training to our teachers who are going to be implementing the SOS in their classrooms, I actually had a number of teachers directly following that training in the week afterwards, naming students for me to check in with and to connect with because they had concerns. So as a result of SOS, maybe not directly on implementation day, it's also helping us capture those kids who need support.
Great. And obviously, we wouldn't want you to share any individual information, but I'm curious whether in your interviews with the initial 19 or the follow-ups, whether, in your assessment there, did those conversations make you feel better or worse or more, like were there lots of kids that were in trouble or lots of kids maybe who weren't?
Okay, so from the 19 kids that were seen, 2 went to a full risk assessment. So they were all screened. And then from there, it was, hey, do we have current concerns and do we need to do a more in-depth risk assessment? And 2 went to a full risk assessment. Regardless of screening or kind of a more in-depth risk assessment, it's always followed up with kind of a communication with parents and a continued kind of loop in and a plan to continue to support that student.
And I will say the families that we were in contact with were just so happy. Many of them said things like, I had no idea she was feeling this way, or he never shared, or even with the student in their presence, like, you never shared this with me. And they were like, I know, I'm sorry, but it was an opportunity to really bring families together. So the conversations were so rich. We feel really lucky to have been a part of that.
Great, thank you. I guess the general gist of my question is do we feel good about where we are as a district, or do we feel like, we have bigger problems than maybe we thought?
Yeah, I think it's such a hard question because we're talking, I would love for these numbers to be nothing, right? So I'd love for us to say every kid has a place, every kid has a trusted adult, every kid has a home that they feel is supportive, or peers that they feel are supportive. I think that 21 students indicating those pretty intense questions feels like a lot to me in a small community. In other places, it has been closer to, in other places in our area where this has been implemented, it is closer to 10 to 12%. Initially, screened. And then as years go on, the numbers reduce. And that's the idea about SOS. So our comprehensive plan would include the sixth graders that are rolling up get implemented to at seventh grade. And then the next year, sixth graders will be implemented at seventh grade. They get it again in ninth grade at both Redondo and Miracosta. So we don't want to just inundate them with the exact same programming. I would say it was a really hard day for our counselors and a really long day. It's emotional to have conversations about suicide for 8 hours and really tough conversations with families. So on the individual level, it's a hard, not fun thing to do. But as a whole, when we're looking at our district, I would say that we are a healthy district that has some outlier situations, and we can always get better.
Thank you. And thank you to you and the others that came to help.
Stephen, did you have a comment?
Comments and maybe some more thoughts. First of all, thank you. I think certainly meeting the moment, like you said, nationally with what's gone on, as well as coming through the pandemic. So I guess to that point, is there anything more that we can do? I guess there may always be individual issues and concerns, and those are not to get into that, but the other thematic things like, the isolation of COVID, like are there things that one would assume have been problematic concerns, or those have been exacerbated issues, things that could get worse, or things that we just need to say, as you say, we've got an ongoing program. So hopefully we're tracking on these things and supporting these families and these kids.
Yeah, I think that this is one way we do that. And I think we do it 100 ways in Hermosa. So we don't have a one size fits all for our students. Unfortunately, Shauna Martinez from Beach Cities was like, how can we help? And Cassie and I rattled off 80,000 things. She was like, oh, let me get another piece of paper. So, but we can always get better. I think parent ed is going to be a really great piece that I would like to, Cassie and I would like to work on in our year 2 goals document. That's maybe 11 pages long now. In addition to that, looking at some bullying prevention and some defining of terms for families and students. But yes, absolutely. There's more we can do in programming. I know Dr. Johnson is working with programs like Playworks, which could be a really great opportunity for our students to engage in active and structured play. There's counseling programs like Second Step that we're rolling out to our families that have been a really great addition to our kids. Oh, yes. And then also Cassie's applying for mentorship to see about her getting an intern for next year and supporting an intern through our program, and just, the addition of more groups. So capturing students differently, kids that are interested in this, kids that are interested in this, and running those groups consistently with somebody that cares and knows them and as that additional trusted adult. So I think we are attacking the problem on multiple fronts, and our kids are in a really good place to be successful after us. And it's just about more information to family, more accurate information to families.
And thank you for that. That's really nice sort of context for things. You've mentioned a lot of organizations, so I won't say thank you to all of them, but obviously thanks. But one that, and you mentioned about parent ed, and I know that I've actually enjoyed the parent speaker series and whatever else is South Bay Families Connected and that resource. It's difficult sometimes to tune into those things, but where there's relevant thematic things and programming that we can put out because we've got access to that resource, that would be another one. And also I noticed from the California, I don't know if this is relevant, the California Healthy Kids Survey that we're going to come to later in the deck. I noticed that chronic sadness in that of grade 7 and grade 6 and grade 7, 17%, 20%. There's, so those are higher than the numbers that you said. So, different classifications, different survey, maybe different levels given suicide but chronic sadness is certainly something also to be concerned about. So,
yeah, and I think again that's how our students define chronic sadness at their age, from their reality. But Cassie definitely has a lot of experiences with our kids and some drama that occurs, some pervasive drama that occurs within groups or misunderstandings. But yeah, I think it's definitely something to watch. And what we don't want is to become a place that has numbers through the roof, and the CDC wants to set up a field office to track what we're doing, right? So right now we're in a place that feels okay, which is hard to say when we still have a considerable amount of students that are feeling that way, or who are saying things like they have attempted suicide. I think that we're doing a lot, and the idea is just expand that scope, expand that reach, and then create an environment where kids just feel super good about themselves.
Thank you.
I have a question, but just at first a comment. I don't think conversations about mental health can start early enough. So thank you so much for the work you're doing on this and the hard conversations. And then secondly, with the ACT acronym, is that applicable to other work? And I'm specifically thinking this past year where we've had issues where students have seen something, heard something that might endanger another student, or thinking it might endanger another student. Does that program translate into other areas of how we get kids to speak up?
Yeah, Dr. Johnson and I talked about acronyms. We were talking about another acronym that we were thinking about bringing to Valley. And I was like, let's not make this an acronym centered play. Let's use one, right? So I think yes. And in my experience, I've actually, a student has come into my office and said, I know that video we watched one day, this wasn't at the site, but I know that the video we watched that one day said to act. And so I wanted to tell you, this is the thing that my friend is doing that I think is problematic. And right there, I was like, she remembered act, right? So I think, like Cassie said earlier, it's that common language, and continuing to reiterate that by creating posters and talking about it through our lunch clubs, talking about it through our groups. But absolutely, see something, say something is kind of an offshoot of acknowledge, care, tell someone, be eyes and ears for your friends. I have to say the two students that submitted a response for their friends, it was a really cool conversation to have with them. And just knowing that, like, I care enough to hear that this kid said this thing to me, and after watching that, I'm not okay with it. They're doing it. So they're grown enough to receive the information and react upon it. And I think I completely agree with you, never too early. So yes, let's continue that.
Great. Thank you so much. If there's no other comments or questions from the board, thank you so much for the report and the work.
Thank you.
Moving on to R-49 2122 construction update with Mr. Gates, Mr. Herrero, and just a quick question. Can we make it less cold in this room?
So we did look at
construction.
we did look into that, and right now we don't have control over the rooms here locally.
Need to yell to Anne. I can yell to. I have a microphone.
We'll definitely follow up in order to try to see if we can get it lowered.
Thanks. Raised, not lowered. Raised.
Make it warmer. Sorry, I just realized that was my cue. I was texting Ann. So next I'd like to introduce Nathan Herrero, principal with SVA, and Matt Gates, president of Erickson Hall, in order to talk about Hermosa View construction progress. Matt, Nathan, take it away.
All right, thank you. Appreciate the time this evening. So we're here for the Hermosa View update. If we can go to the next slide. Well, that looks pretty good. Next slide, please. So we're here to give you the update. We're going to talk about the schedule, next steps. We're also going to talk about remaining contingency. These are a couple pictures of the modernization work in the existing classroom buildings and how we're moving along with progress. Next slide, please. So current contingency, total contingency at the time of the JMP was $1.192 million. We've currently utilized or budgeted 893,000 and change. As you can see from this picture, we've got the second floor roof structural framing in place, and it's continuing to move, and we're beginning to roll out the decking. Game plan is to get decking done end of this month, early next month. And this picture on the left is where we were at in October. So we've come a long way. We're currently at grade with the remaining grading on the south side of the property, and we're almost at grade on the west side of the property. We have some site utilities and some storm drainage work left to do. Next slide. So just kind of where we were at in February and where we're at now. F1 and F2 substantially complete on the exterior portion. We're into finishes and plumbing finishes for the kinder restrooms and beginning to do site work and grading. We've removed all of the, or the vast majority of the excess soils as we're making grade and moving forward. Down below, you can kind of see where we were at in February versus where we're at now with the structural framing on the second floor. Next slide. So key items. We're currently looking to turn building B over on the 12th of August. We've currently utilized 6 of the 10 rain days built into the contract. Pending good weather, we can reduce those rain days and move forward, and the turnover date moves up to about August 8th. We're on track with kitchen work, and the F1 and F2 buildings are moving, really moving well to where we can do a phased move in with the teachers and their equipment well in advance of the August turnover date. Next slide, please. So again, interior and exterior finishes continue to move forward on F1 and F2. We've actually started grading out in the play structure area as well as the backfield. Irrigation, we have an irrigation design change that we're working through that will allow us to start working on the field and finish that off. And then we're working our way down the fire lane to the city street as we're finishing up around those 2 buildings. And then on building B, we're working on interior finishes in June, exterior plaster and siding work. And as the site utility work is finished up, as well as the play structures, we're going to be working on hardscape, sidewalks, ramps, landscape, and irrigation will be a full go. Next slide. We're still tracking the main fiber service to the district, to the campus for July connection date. We'll have infrastructure in place. We'll need the fiber service to ring out and do final testing on a lot of our low voltage and data equipment. But the infrastructure throughout the campus will be complete and waiting on that. Elevator equipment, the delivery and install is slated for July. We have received notification that we are in fabrication, and we're continuing to track that as we move forward. Again, we're going to wrap up the kinders and the existing classroom work, pushing hard. We want to finish those, clean those off, and allow district access as they're remobilizing for the start of the school year. On and off-site utility work continues. We're getting word that Cal Water is beginning, they're getting ready to do the hot tap in the street. Once that's done, we can make the connection at the property line and finalize connections to domestic water and irrigation water and such. So we've got quite a bit of connection work and coordination with the city and their utilities. And then we're targeting a health department inspection for the kitchen in mid-June. Kitchen work is moving forward. Finishes are going in. The owner furnished equipment we have access to, and the contractor furnished equipment, about 90% of that's on site. We're waiting on the hood, which is about 4 weeks out. And then that'll go in. We'll finish up everything, ring out what we need to, and then bring in the health department to get sign off. And with that, next slide. So we're on track. Earlier slide, I kind of showed you as we're moving through the project, how dates move back and forth, but we're beginning to finalize and get hard dates. We are still tracking an 8/18 completion. And again, pending weather, we should be able to give back the remaining rain days. And we are working 10-hour days through the structural steel, and we're going to continue to work 10-hour days with the metal decking. Our framer and drywaller has committed to 10-hour days and weekend work to kick off that second floor and get it ready for our utility rough-ins. So we still do have opportunities as we finish up the existing classrooms, as well as the kinder rooms. We can focus all of our efforts and all of our manpower on building B, the main administrative building, the classroom building, and get that knocked out. We're lining up our pavers and our utility guys. As they finish up, we'll roll right into that. Next slide. And with that, any questions? This picture here pretty much says it all. We're still working in rough-in up on top, while the vast majority of the framing is already in place. Once that roof gets poured, we can bring our glazing contractor in and get the full height walls and glazing framed out and ready to go. So we've got, it's not going to be easy, but it's a race to the finish line now.
Thank you so much, Matt and team. Looks like Stephen's got a question, comment.
Yeah. Thank you, team, those present, as well as Matt, Nathan, for this update. Also the partners, and also to the neighbours. I know with those 10-hour days and weekend work and whatever else, we're very appreciative of the city's support to allow us to get that in and get back on track with, or get to the finish line, as it were. It's amazing, actually, because this deck was submitted obviously in order to make the thing, but even now, like, it's that photograph doesn't do it justice, because you've got a roof on and all the rest of it. So yes. It really is taking shape. It's amazing. I do my daily dog walk to inspect from the outside to watch, but it's all good. Okay, seriously. Contingencies look like they're getting a bit tight. So I don't know who to direct that question to. But the math being, obviously there was a lot of known unknowns and factors going into that, not necessarily for a breakdown on things, but Jason, just sort of, or team, on confidence levels on the budget level.
Highly confident.
We're confident. The last big what if was the irrigation design. We've got that, and we've incorporated pricing. We've also been doing some value engineering through the course of the work. We've got the trash enclosure as an opportunity to provide money back to the contingency in the event something pops up. We've partnered with the district and their material suppliers for their data systems, as well as with our low voltage subcontractor, and kind of created a owner furnished, contractor installed, to get best pricing as we're finishing up this work. So we're working really well together with the district and the design team. We're pretty confident that we're going to be okay. This is a GMP. We're going to figure it out and make it happen. We're not going to be coming back with our hand out.
That's great. Thank you. And I'm in the weekly team meetings, which I guess why maybe leading some of this thought. But I mean, there is things like you say with the irrigation. It's stuff like having green grass and getting that down over summer, and things that sound easy but might be tricky. I know you're planning ahead on all of that. Like last time we had trickiness with the elevator and stuff that's, daily follow-up, but sometimes is out of our control. So I know that those are sort of stress levels. I'm wondering if there's anything else that might be of concern to you, material-wise, concrete, what have you, that are things that just are good for the board to know, things that are maybe keeping you awake at night.
You got to love the market right now for commodities. The Hanson plant up in Palmdale has shut down for unscheduled maintenance for cement, which has a potential issue with concrete supplies. Farther south in the San Diego County, it's been acute. We've been fortunate in the LA and Orange County areas to be able to mitigate that. So we've got that working for us. We're ahead of the curve on that, in that we were notified the day it went down for service. So we've been able to kind of book days well in advance and make it happen. Whereas some of the other contractors may not have known about it until they ordered their concrete. So we're doing a lot of things like that. Key item, we've got the dry well in, which was a huge undertaking, and all of our materials for the storm chamber are on site. Once that gets done, that's going to free the whole back end of the campus up to where we can focus on irrigation, getting the irrigation up and running, get it tested, get coverage, and then we can start running our amendments and getting the turf up to snuff. Good item, we're on the coastline, so we're not looking at 100-degree weather, which will help mitigate the grass to take as we plant it. So we've got some things working for us, but there's a lot there. There's a lot of moving pieces. I agree with you there.
Yeah. Well, look, thank you. I mean, it definitely, the meetings are moving, things are moving at pace, and it's very exciting. And to that end, I think I just offer up, I know with my, marketing brain, really envisaging, I know we are doing for, Jason, do we have full day TK?
Full day TK and Kinder with before and after school daycare.
It's awesome. So, it's just that we're ready. Don't miss out. Register now, sort of marketing.
We will be ready.
Exactly.
We will be ready.
Because it feels, it's feeling good. So thank you for all the teams' work. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Matt and team, Nathan and everybody who's in the room. Obviously, when you walk by, you get the big shiny new building. We touched on it a little bit, but we are doing upgrades to the buildings that remain. I don't know who is best to speak of that, but could we speak to, or have somebody speak to what those upgrades will be in those existing classrooms, please?
Yeah, I can take that one, Matt. So there was value engineering as part of keeping the project at cost. So we did have to eliminate several upgrades to those classrooms, C, D, and E. However, there was work already done. They had relatively new roofs already. Yeah. HVAC systems were installed in all classrooms so that they have the MERV air filters as well as heating and cooling. And then we're installing new AV systems in there. So they'll be equivalent in their AV capability, TV, speaker systems in the fronts of the classroom as well too. And then we'll be doing exterior painting and some minor repair work like on the eaves and such. You mean like to touch up those buildings so they look nice as well.
NPR.
Yeah, that was good. Thank you.
Oh yeah, thanks, Stephen. The NPR is also the interior work is being done, so repainting, doing the floor, as well as some wall repair work. It's actually kind of a trip to see the NPR now. I don't know if anyone's seen it, but it's a big space. It was it was cut in half for classroom capacity. So pretty impressive to see it. And I think it'll be a great space for us.
Okay, thank you. That's very helpful.
It's amazing to have an NPR that might actually be for an NPR as
Yeah.
opposed to library, wherever. I was just going to also say thank you to our partners, HVPTO. I mean, we're also going to have a really nice marquee at the front as well. So, for the community, it's going to really look wonderful. So thank you.
Yeah. Thank you. That was all for me.
Thanks so much. Matt, Jen Cole isn't here today, so she wanted me to bring up the fact that we talked about a July delivery date of July 26th. And we now have an August 18th delivery date on this. So this is partly to you, partly to Jason. Like with that loss of 3 weeks, Jason, how is this going to impact the timeline for moving teachers in and getting the campus ready?
Just to clarify, I believe that's an August 12th completion date. Am I making that up?
18th.
Right now, because we haven't captured the unused rain days, so we're still showing, yes, as the 12th. We'll capture those, and that'll push it back to about the 8th, 7th of August. Couple things we're doing is we're working with the district and giving them a phased access to the site so they can start moving in well in advance of a July date in the existing classrooms, as well as kinders F1 and F2. So we'll be able to give them that. Come middle of June, we'll be able to turn over NPR and the kitchen work, kitchen area. The last gasp is getting after the building B. We're anticipating the building being complete to where you can move in, but we'll be ringing out systems such as fire alarm, HVAC, doing commissioning on the HVAC work, and just making sure everything's up and running, but you will have access to be moving into the buildings in a late July timeframe.
And I'll just piggyback off of Matt that the phase move-in, I think, will be key for us. That's not an opportunity that we had at Vista. I'd also point out too that we have Paula Montablo, who is an expert at moving schools now. So it's a very experienced and veteran team here. And so we think that that's different. Also, the Vista is a very different campus in relation to View. It's more of a traditional California campus. So it's not built as a stack. So like, for example, the reliance on an elevator to move in, which made that very tricky. And we'll be working within the course. I mean, if you remember, like we'll actually be working within the course of summer in this case, whereas we moved 2 schools really in 1 week and then opened full day after COVID. So we feel pretty confident, just based off of our traumatic experience, and we think that we're going to be able to get in there, and it'll be smooth.
Thanks so much to both of you on that. And then just one last piece. I understand the elevator isn't going to be as critical of an issue, but with the August inspections of Spectrum and the health inspection, how would that impact the opening of school?
Well, I mean, it was right down to the wire at this as well too. But we don't foresee. You mean like unless EHCC is going to drop a bomb on me today? But like we don't foresee any issues with those inspections. Spectrum actually, that's July 1st when service goes live, and we're actually working currently right now with IT about doing some finishing work for trenches. So Spectrum's ready to put in the wiring. I say that like I know what I'm talking about, but is that right, Aaron? Yeah. All right, cool. And then on the health inspection, because we did have a kind of a late kitchen inspection before, but I have to say, actually, Erickson Hall was fantastic in helping us get over the finish line with the health department.
We've identified those are key inspection items, and we've got it on our schedule, and we are hitting those on a weekly cadence, verifying that we're going to be ready. That mid-June health inspection has some float in it already. We're actually hoping for an early June inspection, but I don't want to promise something and miss it. So I'm under promising and going to over deliver. How's that?
I'll let Jen know. Thanks. Matt, Nathan, thank you to the team in here. If there's no other questions from the board.
I was just going to say next, Quentin.
He doesn't have any.
But was just what's our next check-in, both sort of as a milestone review, just so we know when we'll catch you virtually again, and then also just an opportunity maybe for the board to go and visit the campus as it's taking shape and what have you.
Yeah, so we
Go ahead.
I'll take this, Matt. So
Okay.
we have a board visit that we're planning for early May to do a site walk, which talked about that at our last meeting. And then our next board check-in will be in June for progress.
Excellent. Thank you so much. Next board report, R-50-2122, equity inclusion presentation.
Test. Hi. Good evening tonight. I'm here to present on our equity and inclusion update. This is the third and final update for the school year on the equity and inclusion action plan that was approved by the board back in June of 2021. Slide. Here's a summary. There were 12 objectives to the plan. We believe that all 12 of those objectives are on target. I want to give a special thanks to our staff, our team, our principals, district team for keeping us going. This was an ambitious plan envisioned by the community of stakeholders, from parents to staff, as well as board members. And I really do believe that some genuine hard work and effort has been put in to get us to where we are today. And it's pretty remarkable considering that this is a less than a one-year turnaround. Slide. Here's an overview of the objectives within the Equity and Inclusion Action Plan. I always just like to take an opportunity to highlight that the true purpose of this plan is in order to support our at-risk learners. I mean, like, who is that? I mean, like, well, in all areas, whether it be social, emotional well-being, academic support, peer-to-peer relationships, that's somewhere between 15 and 25% of our students, depending on which subject you're talking about. And we know that to be true now because we've done the assessments necessary to understand the performance of our students with wellness, as you saw just today with the SOS or Panorama's California Healthy Kids Survey, all the way to achievement, whether that be through the CAS by Ready scores or the FMP assessment data. Slide. The Equity and Inclusion Committee continues to meet. It's amazing. We just had our 8th meeting, and theirs are the subjects you see reviewed. They've been integral in reviewing the progress of the action plan. They really are, functioning as a monitoring and feedback committee as we go through and we review our objectives. They provide input. They're a great group. We do plan to continue with the committee going into next year, and we'll put information out about how to volunteer for that community going into May and June. Slide. The FMP benchmark assessment system, that's the Fontes and Pinnell reading assessment. It is the gold standard in regard to understanding how a child reads and what you need to do as a teacher to support them. We continued with our second FMP assessment, which was completed in February and March. Those results were made available to our staff and our families on March 18th. And those results are also available on our equity and inclusion dashboard. Slide. We recently completed the Panorama assessment along with the California Healthy Kids Survey. These are our social emotional wellness as well as diversity and inclusion measurements. California Healthy Kids Survey is devoted to a broad overall school climate. It is also considered one of the gold standards in California as far as school climate measurements. It's very old. It's from the 90s. And it is all encompassing and done once a year for certain grade levels. We do have more full reports that are available through those clickable links, which are available also on the website. If you want to take a deep dive into those results, I'm just going to talk about the summaries. Slide. So this is the Panorama results. The construct is sense of belonging. I think another way of framing it is just social emotional wellness. There you see some of the results in comparison from the December 2021 assessment to the March 2022 assessment. Let's say most of our results remained flat or consistent. One thing that we did take from the survey, though, is that anxiety and depression continue to be probably our foremost issue when it comes to the wellness of our students. So the issue that we continue to tackle, I think through quantitative as well as qualitative review of our students, that this is continuing to be the trend that we see. And it's also where we need to put our energy and focus. Slide. The diversity and inclusion student results, again, if you go into the fuller report, I do think that we've done a great job here as a school district making gains from last year to this year with, I think it was about a 10% increase in our scores. There is much work to do. But I would say the thing that I'm most proud of is that we've created a conversation in our district. And I was actually just recently, 2 days ago, meeting with the ASB students, and that's at Hermosa Valley. And we were discussing homelessness in Hermosa Beach. And I was floored by just the level of empathy and the types of questions that were being asked by our students. Like, these are students that are so much more socially aware than I could ever dream to be when I was their age. So I'm really proud of our community and just the growth that we continue to make. And it really does come from that. Like, our community is invested, in building leaders of tomorrow, building global citizens. And I think it's really reflective. Just have a conversation with one of our students. You'll see it firsthand, and it also shows up in this data. Slide. This is the California Healthy Kids Survey. As I mentioned, it's a very dense survey. And the areas of concern, or the areas to highlight, I think also fall in the anxiety, depression area. There were new measurements that were introduced this year under the California Healthy Kids Survey in response to the COVID pandemic and school closures. One thing I like about the California Healthy Kids Survey is also a criticism of it, is that each year they change the survey in order to evaluate evolving needs. I do think it's done through good social science practices and care. WestEd is one of the best. However, though, there are new constructs, such as Stephen brought up about chronic sadness. So we kind of look, to see these measurements moving forward in future years and how they line up. Another one was around student engagement and boredom. So I think it's great that these questions are being asked, and I think that it'll be something that we need to continue to pay attention to, of how we perform year to year, and then also looking at state and relative community standards. In most cases, California Healthy Kids Survey results are published publicly. Some districts don't, but most do. Slide. This is just a reflection of some of those data points, as well as substance use and abuse. I would say, in looking at our data, that substance abuse, while an issue in any community, I think that our numbers are still relatively low. I also would say too, I would just caution that the California Healthy Kids Survey only measures certain grade levels. So that, in Hermosa Beach, there's less of a norm, because one grade level is like the entire school. Whereas if you were in another larger district, you would see like a swath of kids across the district. So it may be cohort dependent as well. So you might see wide swings with those responses, especially in regard to substance abuse or use. Slide. Moving to objective 4, this is our tri-benchmark system. For those that have reviewed the dashboard, they've seen the results of some of those systems, such as iReady and the FMP. I want to give kudos to our principals who are here tonight, who have worked closely with their teacher leadership teams in order to establish benchmark systems and/or a CGI measurement at CAS. It's cognitively guided instruction, just another deeper dive into how our students process math and solve math problems. Slide. Oh, actually, can we go back on that one? We also have been they've been diligently working on establishing achievement goals going into the new year, in evaluating our students' baseline progress. And we look forward to presenting those goals to the board in June, looking forward to the 22-23 school year. And a major credit to the principals and to the staff. To try to establish a baseline in this year, even with all these data measures, and then to forecast for the next year. That I think it's really really a credit to them to again continue to take that step towards a goal culture of like we're working, like for progress rather than just year to year cycles. Thank you. Slide. Oh wait, no, did we go forward? Okay. All right, I'll keep going here. The data tracking system. So our teachers do have access. They did receive training. I think that as that database continues to build up, we'll see more usage. Where I think the usage will be most important is at the beginning of the school year when teachers have new students, and then they'll have access to this data at their fingertips rather than having to go dig it up in a cume. We have been able to upload the most recent iReady and FMP data. We're working on our system. So like we get the data, we upload the data. And Vicky Suarez has done a fantastic job at under Paula. Slide. This is the equity dashboard. I just want to emphasize and highlight that we're the only school district that I know of. If someone can find another one, then I'm happy to look at it. That produces a dashboard like this with multiple measures as well as available on an ongoing basis. We provide our progress data. I think that is unusual for a school district. We're very proud of that fact. So I encourage people to go on and look at the equity dashboard. It's a great snapshot of data. We've kept it relatively simple because we think it's better than the California dashboard because you can actually understand it. So I strongly encourage you to look at it. And yes, we are making fantastic progress. If you look at our growth from the beginning of this year going into the spring, we just actually finished they're in the process of doing the third iReady assessment. So we'll have that data available for the board going into May and June. Slide. So our principals have diligently worked on the SST process. There you see the reflected numbers. We do expect an uptick at Hermosa View Vista with the number of initial assessments. I don't think that's unusual if you consider students being out of school, as well as that it's the lower grade level, more unidentified students. We'll continue to look at how these numbers balance out when we look to the fall of next year, when we've had a full year of school consistency. Slide. We continue to work with UCLA Center X and Dr. Orange, and we've gotten positive feedback from our staff as well as from the staff members that serve on the Equity and Inclusion Committee. At our last session in January, Dr. Orange talked a little bit more about culturally responsive teaching and learning and shared with us some examples about what that may look like. I would say that if you're looking for like a bottom line of like, what does that work look like? It's about, trying to help teachers understand that how all the different backgrounds and perspectives and needs in a class and need to be supported, and how a teacher can approach doing that. Another way of calling that is good teaching. And so anything to help good teaching, I think will better support our students as individual learners. Slide. Objective 9 is our tier 1 through 3 intervention. This would be like the work in progress sign. There is a lot of things that are in the fire there, from after school intervention to air tutors to the student academic support class, to the Linda Gill providing level literacy intervention. We have a lot of different things that we're doing, and we're attacking this. And there's many students that are participating in intervention. As far as like, what are the results of that? I think you see the fruits of that labor that will be reflective in our trimester 2 iReady scores, as well as going into now our trimester 3 iReady scores with the increase in growth of students. There was a great LA Times article recently that stated that one of the most important things to be provided to students coming out of COVID is tutoring. That is like the most important thing. And I really think that our model has made a great effort to provide that level of individual support to students outside of the classroom. And we look forward to working with the board and looking forward at next plan to take these COVID response actions and continuing them going into the next school year as part of our intervention system. It's going to be a slide. Objective 10, our school-wide programs. I'm going to defer a little bit of this because our principals are going to prevent on our culturally responsive campuses, but we have taken on months. I want to preface with, there's been a conversation around, providing these practices or providing this support should not just be a monthly practice. But I do want to emphasize that you got to start somewhere. And it's important to establish these practices, and sometimes just the way that schools function, monthly themes help. It's an easy organizational tool So by no means do we feel that this is the only thing that we should be doing, but I do think that it's a step in the right direction. And I'm very proud of like the staff's work, and we have our responsive specialists, Jen Cedarquist, Heather Meyer, and Andrea Ager. We've done a great job creating little mini lessons in order to highlight even like these months and like activities for teachers to do in the classroom. Slide. Speaking of which, their work is still continuing to be uploaded on the digital resources, so teachers have easy access to these lessons and or practices. It is a Google Drive that continues to be built out. There is an example of one of the mini lessons that was provided to our teachers about poverty awareness, and we'll continue to build that bank to allow access to our teachers. Slide. Finally, our communication procedure. This is the one I think that we had the greatest length to go. I mean, like, and it needed to work closely with the Equity and Inclusion Committee in order to kind of, sort of fine tune like what we were looking for. I would say like our most recent progress, I'm proud of that. We have recognized that for crisis response, I mean, like there's work for us to be done. So one of those is that we identified that our intruder response, run, hide, distract, was something that we really needed to work on. And that was a sort of an unintended consequence of exploring this work, that perhaps we are underprepared and we need to work with our students in our community on that. And then we also talked about, in the event of either a bias response or a critical incident that happens in the community or in the nation, how would we respond to that? And so we started creating this matrix of like, well, how would the district respond in turn? And what we found from going round and round on this was that ultimately, when something happens that's a critical incident, it is probably not going to boil down to a matrix. It's probably going to boil down to a late night phone call between me, Sylvia, and Jessica Bledsoe or Lisa saying like, oh my God, this thing has happened. We need to make a decision, and we need to be prepared tomorrow for our teachers and for our students and for our community. And then even later night phone call when I try to relay to Maggie what the plan is. So I would say that ultimately it's going to be an administrative decision about that response. So the question becomes, what is the capacity of our staff in order to receive a plan and then facilitate a conversation or a response with their students? And what I would say is that I believe that our staff has great capacity because of the relationships they have with their students, but I don't know if it's equal capacity. And I do think having experienced a critical incident, such as the passing of a student, that one thing that became quickly clear is that different people have different capacities in order to facilitate that type of conversation with their students or with adults in general. So what we are doing is we're bringing in a trainer in order to start to work with our staff about conducting those types of conversations in the classroom in response to a crisis, whatever that crisis may be. And that involves, a social circle. How do you handle certain questions? How do you create a safe space of conversation for students? So I think that rather than focusing on what the specific incident may be, it's probably best that we focus on what is the capacity of staff and, where does that feedback come from? Our staff. So thank you for our staff to giving us this feedback that they need that capacity, and that came from those that served on the Equity and Inclusion Committee. And we look forward to, as a great first step to that training, I believe in May. Slide. So there was a quick review of those objectives. Again, our work in equity and inclusion is to meet the needs of all of our students, because we believe that all of our students can be successful academically as well as socially, emotionally. And I think this is great work. It's a solid foundation, and there's much more work to do. Slide. Thank you. And at this time, I'll take any questions.
Thank you so much, Jason. Want to open it up to the board?
Jason, team, thank you so much. Like you say, it's a huge body. Just going through it, each objective and the amount of work that goes in. So special thanks, I think, not only to yourself and the administration, the committee members, the ETF before, Maggie, Jen especially is our lead and representative on that now, and it's a lot of work that does go into it. So first of all, huge thanks. Quite proud that we're the only district also sort of putting that out there, and also tracking on this, and like you say, build on that, which is great. The data point I just wanted to say, not only for at-risk learners, but also supporting all students, like the ability to have that data set and access. So I was curious, future data set, I know iReady may not be around forever, correct? Or sort of just wondering, we've got it for next year, but then after that, we'll sort of figure out, it will transition to CASP, I'm assuming?
Not yet. We're on a
Okay.
multi-year deal with iReady,
Okay.
I believe for 3 years, Sylvia. Yeah, for 3 years. And that was in response to positive feedback from our staff,
Okay.
As well as the ability to do in-time assessment. The problem with CASP, I mean, like, it's not that it's a poor assessment. It's just that it's an annual assessment.
Right.
So our plan, we used our dollars wisely to purchase a 3-year agreement. And then we would in the future, beyond that agreement, transition into CASP and using what they call the interim assessment benchmarks, which is free. But I think that's still a ways out and would put us well beyond the COVID impact.
That's great. Objective 9, intervention. Also, we've got summer school now, correct? I didn't see that on the slide.
Thanks. Yeah, thanks for bringing that up because that's a relatively new development. So I appreciate that. Yes. So we, the Gluckster and I have figured out a way to secure the ELOPE grant, and we're working currently.
And Sylvia's department.
That's Sylvia's department. Yes, large department. So we're working on securing a grant, and then Maggie was actually with me when we got the CDE to increase the dollar amount from 50,000 to 100,000. So apparently, all we had to do was ask. And so we're working with that. And what's funny is that we were going to the CDE for help on how to plan the ELOPE grant because Sylvia's plan is so good. I think what it's now turning into is we may be presenting our plan as a model for other small districts. So more to come on that. I mean, like as we go to the board for approval on the ELOPE itself, but we feel like we're pretty close to that. But we are offering summer school this year. We're going to start flying positions soon and start identifying our student lists of who is going to be invited to summer school.
Great. And on the last one on objective 12, I know we already do have communication going out. Your superintendent update, I know principal updates, maybe surf reports, but as a parent, I don't know, I feel like it's always wonderful hearing sort of obviously whatever's relevant, but what's happening of this month or things that particularly at a class level or theme level that parents can then have a conversation with their children and whatever else. So as much as whatever points we're also planning to take a review. I mean, this is a huge deck and there's links to things in here. So it's almost seeing the wood for the trees. I don't know if there's sort of a how to celebrate the successes as well as point out that this is one of our top 3 goals as objectives as a district to continue our work around equity and inclusion.
It's a great point. And I, in my last superintendent update, I highlighted that probably the stat that I'm most proud of with the trimester 2 iReady data was the 10% increase in performance of students with special needs. So I think that's like, continuing to lead the headline with this work. And then we look forward to in June reporting on the progress of the equity and inclusion goals for the district goals as a summary. The one thing that's like about these iReady benchmark or the equity and inclusion benchmarks is like they're running in tandem with our district goals.
Yeah.
So I think that June is like the conclusion of progress because obviously the work continues into next year. But we'll continue to look for opportunities with our social media as well as our principal newsletters in mind to highlight some of this work, especially the key points about the impact that it's having with student achievement and wellness.
Yeah, absolutely. Particularly across all the groups as well, ELA, et cetera. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you.
Jason, again, thank you from me personally on behalf of the work that the task force and your whole team is doing. I had a couple comments and questions. One off of the comms piece that you just mentioned. I think it's the absolutely right thing to do in terms of thinking about how to equip teachers to have hard conversations. I think that's absolutely the right approach. Instead of trying to figure out what the conversation is, give them the tools to be able to tackle the kids that are in the space. In terms of the data that you presented, first looking at checks at California Healthy Kids Survey, like what comes to my brain on that is what's within our locus of control. And this is also just for the board to consider on this. Like facilities upkeep, that's within our locus, right? Like I'm not going to be able to control where our students get marijuana or cigarette or vaping substances, but we can figure out how to make our facilities really good. Same thing with, looking at some of the social emotional learning supports, and the earlier presentation today, I think, speaks to how we're really diving into that data to try and build it up. So some of these pieces, I think it's so important that it is being shared with parents in terms of, the school is willing to do all of these things, and this is parents, this is where you come in and where the home conversations happen. And then the last part on that was off of Panorama, specifically looking at the DEI and what Stephen had mentioned earlier with the chronic sadness. Again, maybe there is like, sad and bored are really broad general words that kids can use for a lot of things. But, my mind goes to Maslow on that. We're not going to get to academic excellence if kids are emotionally barred from in coming into a space where they feel like they can learn. So the more that we can get to this work, I think, to your point, that DEI work leads us to excellence. I think it's so important that we're starting here, because if kids aren't feeling like they can be in a space where they can learn, we're not going to push them to the academic place. So thank you for focusing on the academic excellence of this work.
Yeah, and I just want to credit the board and the community for leaning in. When I arrived here, one of our first actions together was to install a second counselor, bring back the counselor full-time, install a second counselor to support students, which is the foundation, right? So I think it speaks volumes that it's one thing to say like, hey, we believe in this stuff. It's another thing to spend money on it.
Mm-hmm.
And resources, as we know, are finite here. So I appreciate the board's commitment to that.
Good to go.
Thank you.
Opening up the report R-51-2122, culturally responsive campuses, with principals Bledsoe and Tinita.
Thank you for having me again with my counterparts. And we're excited to present today on our update for the months of January to March. Slide. So I think you know these well, but as we look at programming, keeping our principals in line with our programming is something that's really central to what Lisa and I want to do at each of our sites. And the people that are doing this great work of equity and inclusion and culturally responsive practices really also have that in mind and are doing an amazing job at creating experiences for students that highlights things that maybe they're not experiencing themselves, but should be mindful of. Slide. So let's talk about January. Slide, thanks.
I'll go. So I should share, I know that Dr. Johnson mentioned this, but we have a team, Heather Myers and Andrea Ager and Jen Cederquist, and they help build these lessons to help teachers. A lot is going on. They're doing LLI, they're doing STEAM, and while they all want to embrace the whole, equity and really providing students a way to have empathy towards others and understanding, there's a lot going on. So having these lessons that they create as a go-to, as a starting point, is really helpful to teachers to make this happen. So here's an example of January for poverty. It could start in the K2 classroom with a picture of the day. Here's a picture. What do you see? What can you infer? Sometimes people might think it's a homeless shelter. Some might say, oh, it's like the camping cot. I've slept on one before. Or, oh, I saw then there was a hurricane I saw everybody in a school sleeping. So lots of rich conversations can come just from the picture. And then also January, we focused on a specific book about a woman who lived in a box. And so they kind of talked about have you ever seen a homeless person? And just really developing that empathy and what can I do? And so a lot of times in the classroom, that sometimes it's a discussion, sometimes there's a classroom activity. And in this case, there was an opportunity to get involved with the local community in a pantry. So that's what the link is there. And alongside with Kindness Week, which I think is the last slide, but the Super Bowl was here in January. So they had a big Super Kids, Super Sharing event. And so we kind of tag team that all in with a theme, and students brought in things, and the PTO was great in kind of collecting it and sharing it with others who don't have the blessing that we have here.
Awesome. Thank you. I'd also like to echo what Lisa said. Having been a secondary teacher, when we're looking at 6-8 resources, it can be really challenging to make resources that are content specific that students are grasping at this level. So Jen, Andrea, and Heather's work creating the database that Jason showed you, or Dr. Johnson showed you earlier, is really an amazing opportunity for staff to pull something out, pull a lesson, and then deliver it. So for grades 3 to 5, one of the books that we focused on was Dear Librarian. And this is talking to students about creating, understanding and finding, seeking out safe spaces in the community. So what is a safe space? And for this particular book, it was the library as a safe space. But it's a neat discussion with young students about what's a safe space for you? Where do you go to have a good time? And where do you feel safe? And why do you feel safe there? So it was a great discussion. In 6-8, this was an actual NPR story. And what I found particularly interesting was the extension activity that kids are informing educators, us educators, of what can we do to help you? So what can we do to help students that maybe are struggling with those basic essential needs? And it's neat to hear out of the box ideas from people that are younger and boots on the ground. So thank you.
Oh, I can talk about it. So we both did this. It was really led by our counselors, Troy and Cassie, the Great Kindness Challenge. So they had like a spirit week where they really focused on encouraging students to take a moment to be kind, to include someone else in a game. And there was activities, I'm sure, stickies and Post-its all over campus, and expressing gratitude to other people. So I think there might be, is there a picture? The next slide? Yeah. So there's some pictures there of campus. And then as we talk about Heather Myers a lot, you'll see a lot of literature. She's always great about really focusing in on that. And then I think that the students also during this month, we had our Read Across America, and the police and the fire department came. And so that little picture on the bottom right-hand side are our students with a little thank you note for that. Yeah.
It was an amazing experience to watch our students focus on kindness, because I think we talk about it a lot, but the act of doing it was really neat to see. And if you were to go back, Christine, this was the checklist that I saw many of our students feverishly filling out. Did you get this one yet? Did you do this thing? Did you hug anyone? You can hug me. And so it was really neat for them to spend that week doing great work. We also had, themed days. And I think the picture on the next slide was Tutu Tuesday. Is that? Yes. Thank you. Go ahead.
Well, those are just some books that Miss Myers read in the classrooms during library time with the same theme.
Some of them have been turned into movies. I don't know if you guys have heard of Wonder, but pretty fantastic book of a boy with facial disfigurement and what that looks like for other students that interact with children that look and act and feel and learn differently. So it's a great opportunity to talk about things Maggie mentioned earlier, never too early to talk about topics that can be challenging for students. And we are embodying that through our library connections. February. So go ahead, slide. Thank you. Oh, you can.
Again. Okay, so February is Black History Month, as you can see. And so what we did at VIEW, actually, this was one of the many things, because as I walked through the classrooms, there were many, many lessons. And I guess last year they really took some time to build out Black History Month. So there were many lessons happening. But the one that we did share through our team was Tar Beach, which is written by an African-American author and artist. And really it talks about story quilts and how the making of the quilt and the story, sharing traditions, your family culture and all of that. And so there's a link there to the author's biography, and then also discussion questions about what is your family story? What are some things about your culture? And so the extension was to create their own story quilt and share their story. And this is a really fun link. So when you're at home, you got to listen to this. Black people who changed the world. There's a lot of history lessons in there with a fun, snappy tune, and just really is a fun way to kind of share all the great contributions they've made. And I believe Mr. Harrison did it also in music, so it was everywhere at VIEW.
You did. Slide, thanks. On the right-hand side of the slide that you're viewing is the counseling connection. I have the great honor to read some of the things that Cassie Riley puts out prior to her publishing it. And this was one that really wowed me with regard to how deep she went for our students and the important points that she highlighted for Black History Month. Really commemorating the true heritage and achievement of African Americans, the celebration of diversity, the understanding of our own possibilities. So students being able to reach for the stars and not define themselves by any one category. And then focusing on community building, which I think Hermosa does really well. And so our ability to reach beyond that with like Super Kids, Super Sharing, and being a donor school is another way to lend that idea of the gift of giving. In Hidden Figures. I think that might be the next slide, please. So these are a couple of the books that were about our library connection from Black History Month. They probably seem familiar to you, but Hidden Figures was a group of African-American women mathematicians who really were integral in the space race. So students are learning about people that change the world, also links to Women's History Month that's coming up. But again, just a fantastic opportunity to have our students accessing current reading curriculum. Shout out to PTO, who has funded a significant amount of amazing books that are current. Our age of our libraries are, well, you're creating one. And then the age of my library is moving up from 26 years old to more current. And we're just very appreciative of the funds that are helping to contribute to that.
I wanted to add something. And I think too, adding to the library is so important because children need to see people of different ethnicities and color and all of that. And so I think that's really important. And I forgot to mention PTO again, great. Our assemblies, they help fund some of our assemblies. And so we had our first in-person assembly with Black History Month, which was a We Tell Stories, where they came and shared African-American folklore that had life lessons. So really tag team to a Tar Beach story quilt lesson because they were all talking about folklore and important lessons learned from life in that.
Awesome. Thank you, slide. Okay, go ahead.
That's probably me.
Yeah.
Okay, women's history. So you're going to hear another catchy tune from her. If you watch that link, Women Are History Makers, and she'll go through many different women who've had a positive impact in our world. And in March, we focused on women inventors. And so there were like 4 different links of women scientists who created these great inventions. And it could have been simple as the paper brown bag that they bring to lunch. Mm-hmm. But look, we still use those bags, yes. Right? And then the extension activity with that was actually kind of tagged on from February because it was the first Black woman who had her patent. And so from that, they asked the students, well, what could you invent? And what kind of patent would you have? So there was an extension activity for them to weave in STEAM, right, with all of it. So as you can see, even though it's month by month, they really kind of intertwine with each other and they kind of spiral and continue to tell students about the impact of so many different people.
Thank you, slide. And at Valley for Women's History Month, Jen Cedarcrest actually introduced us to, is there another slide? I thought I saw one more. Go back, sorry. Introduced us to ListenWise, which is a resource that has free components to it, yay. But that also is a new way for students to receive content and curriculum and reading, but by sitting, listening, and taking that in using our, servicing our auditory learners. This, go ahead, Women's History Month focused on, and I'll let Lisa talk about these library connections, but one in particular spoke about college athletes making history for women. So it was the first female kicker in a university, playing on a university team, and her trials and tribulations about injury and what she's had to overcome in order to be competitive at that level. And then addition to that, celebrating female firsts. So things that maybe students thought happened way long ago, but were surprised to learn that they were actually more recent, that females recently did this particular thing. So it's an amazing way to tap into that resource with our library connections.
So I don't have much to add to this, but it's basically, again, Miss Heather Myers in action and making all of this real slow. When I walk through the classrooms and I see her, she's so great at teaching right at their level, finding a book that grasps them, that tells the message. And so I know too, one of the books that's not on there was like Tree Lady, which is about, I can't remember her name, but it's the lady who basically transformed San Diego. It was a desert before she came, but she loved trees. And when she went down there, she missed trees. And that's where Balboa Park and all of the greenery started. But if it wasn't for her, it might be looking like Phoenix, right? And so again, Heather just brings in all these books to bring the themes to life.
So I think that one of the things that is illustrative of our presentation tonight is it's not just about what students are doing, but it's about the people that are doing it. We've said names like Jen Cedarquist, Angela Ager, Heather Myers, and they're not just people who have created a resource for our students, but they're living being celebrities to our kids. They're like, Miss Myers, I can't believe I saw you at Target. And their impact is just so much farther than I think they even realize. It's just really nice. And we feel very honored to work alongside them. Does the board have any questions?
Thank you so much for that report and update.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you. Brilliant.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Moving on to consent. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Thank you, Doug. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Stephen. Christine, if you would.
Board Member Cluth,
Aye.
Board Member McCall.
Aye.
Vice President Clerk Gardner.
Aye.
President Bove LaMonica.
Aye.
All in favor.
Thank you.
I'd just like to thank the city for unfreezing us as well. I don't know. I actually felt the blood coming back to my body, so it's helpful.
You're from the tundra.
Anyway,
Finally feeling my hands again. Okay, moving on, since we have gone through consent into board action. Looking at the time right now, just a thumbs up from folks. Are we okay? Do people need to stretch? People thumbs up. That's okay. Good. If anyone needs a break, go ahead and take it as you need on your own time. Moving on into the superintendent. Jason, if you would.
Thank you, Maggie. It is recommended to the board to adopt the governance compact summary. We made some revisions based on the feedback from the board coming out of our board workshop or board governance workshop. Those changes were shared with the board and we recommend for adoption. And I also am grateful that we have the governance compact. I think it's a great document and I appreciate the work that was put into it prior to me actually coming in. Thank you.
Comments or questions for the superintendent?
thank you, Maggie, for being author, sort of original author, and I know the board's built on, and just to tag on to Jason's point, the fact that it's a really important compendium of everything. It's got reference points, so any new board members in the future coming on board, it's a great sort of onboarding tool, but it's also something that lives and breathes. And I think just every year review with goals and updates that naturally happen. But I think it's a great framework, and I appreciate everyone's time and energy going into it.
If no other further comments or questions, no, Quentin.
I move.
I second.
Is there a motion? Is there a second? Christine, if you would.
Board Member Cluth.
Aye.
Board Member McCall.
Aye.
Vice President Clerk Gardner.
Aye.
President Bove LaMonica.
Aye.
All in favor.
Excellent. Moving into board action on business, B-112-2122. Ms. Montalvo.
Thank you. It is recommended that the board approve the memorandum of understanding between the district and the Hermosa Beach Youth Basketball, or HBYB. This is an understanding between the two organizations for a payment schedule to support an installation of additional basketball court at Hermosa View School. They have volunteered to pick up that cost and support us in that effort. Total cost is almost 19,000. Their yearly payment would be about $4,700 payable over the course of 4 years. There is a possibility that they would pay that off early, they indicated, but we would like to have 4 payments.
Thank you so much. Are there questions from the board? Is there a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Thank you, Quentin. Christine?
Board Member Cluth,
Aye.
Board Member McCall.
Aye.
Vice President Clerk Gardner.
Aye.
President Bove LaMonica.
Aye.
All in favor.
Thank you so much. B-113-2122, Ms. Montalvo.
Great, thank you. This is the counterpart to the previous motion that was just approved. The district has received a change order from Erickson Hall, change order number 1, to install the basketball courts at Hermosa View School, which HBYB has agreed to sponsor. This is the formality for the district to pay Erickson Hall for that work out of the general fund, and then HBYB will reimburse the district.
Thank you so much. Questions, comments?
This will have no effect on the timeline, right?
No.
I move.
Quentin moves.
Second.
Thank you, Stephen. Christine?
Board Member Cluth,
Aye.
Board Member McCall.
Aye.
Vice President Clerk Gardner.
Aye.
President Bove LaMonica.
Aye.
All in favor.
Thank you. B-114-2122, Ms. Montalvo.
Great, thank you. It is recommended that the Board of Education approve the contract with BRG Office Movers to move our school sites and district office this summer. With the completion of the project in phases, we will have a phased move beginning in June, July, and our last move sometime in August, depending on when they're complete with Building B. We, Nancy, hosted a job walk. We advertised in the Daily Breeze. We had 3 bidders come out, 2 of which submitted bids. The winning bidder is BRG at $49,200, and that is a not to exceed bid.
Thank you. Comments or questions? Is there a motion?
So moved.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you. Christine?
Board Member Cluth,
Aye.
Board Member McCall.
Aye.
Vice President Clerk Gardner.
Aye.
President Bove LaMonica.
Aye.
All in favor.
Thank you. Moving to personnel, P-41-2122, Dr. Johnson.
It is recommended to the board to approve the revised school psychologist and speech language pathologist salary schedule and doing a study of local and broader South Bay school districts, as well as the current market. We found that our salary schedule was not competitive. For example, that we had difficulty filling these positions this year and had to hire contracted laborers in order to fill those positions. A revision of their schedule we view as a cost-saving measure in order to make us competitive on the market to hire the best as well as hire someone, so we're not having to contract the labor. This was put to, proposal was put to HBA, who did approve a tentative agreement pending board approval. Thank you.
Comments or questions? Motions?
Moved.
Thank you, Doug.
Second.
Thank you, Stephen. Christine?
Aye.
Board Member Cluth, Board Member McCall.
Aye.
Vice President Clerk Gardner.
Aye.
See what happens. And President Bove LaMonica.
Aye.
All in favor.
Thank you so much. Moving on to board member roundtable. Emanating with Mr. McCall. What do you want to talk about? Traffic?
Actually, no, important things. Superintendent, in looking at the next agenda, superintendent evaluation, we've got that, like just a calendar. I know because we have that sort of built out, but I'm assuming there'll be a longer closed session for the next, for that initial review and all the other extra meetings we may need.
Yeah, so we're looking at an May, a 2-hour session, and then June likely being just a 1-hour session, and then a June special session that would be a 2-hour closed session. I'll relay that layout. Maggie just got it today, so she just got it, but like I'll relay that in the board update tomorrow. But it would be an availability issue in order to meet those closed sessions. So we do need to decide whether we're going to start earlier or start later, if that makes sense. So a 4 o'clock start time for closed session, or a 7 o'clock start time for open session.
Don't forget Quentin's presentation on the LCAP.
Quentin's presentation on the LCAP too. So that's a 3-hour open session.
I also move that we pack the June 27th agenda.
That's great.
Anything else?
Good. I'd just like to, I'll come to it after we've completed the campaign, but just for board's reference, we filmed a creative video around e-bike safety. It was a really great team effort from the administration through to students who actually filmed it, and teachers who were part of it and gave up their weekend to do it. So we're planning more things around that as we gear up for, by pun intended, Bike Safety Month, which is next month. And so more to come. That's all I have. Thank you.
I have 3 things. One, reminder to the board for the April 22nd survey off of the follow-up from the budget workshop. We had listed a number of items, requires the board to do their part and get information back to the soup so we can move ahead off of the budget proposals that we.
Quentin definitely gets the cookie on that one. He was the first to submit.
Because he's missing June. He's trying to balance it out. The second thing is I wanted to highlight from Suzanne's letter to the board that there's been on and off conversations about how to do native planting, how to do more sustainable planting at each of our sites. And she had felt that she's unable to take on Vista and View with the native endeavors that she's been doing, but encourage the board to look into several other conservation groups that are out there. So
we've actually talked about that with site leadership about in our gardening program, because there is limited gardening space on Hermosa Vista campus. So possibly considering that being part of our gardening program, but a natural planning. So, and Suzanne's so great. While it may be something she would take on, we may consider talking to her about guidance.
And then the last bit I have is just a question. What happened with the tree conversation at the View campus? With the ones that were on the city property?
The trees the replanting of the trees. I'm proud to report that the trees have been selected and they will be planted shortly. But a lemon bush, that was the winner chicken dinner. Lemon bush?
Yeah, right.
Yeah, lemon. Bottle brush was the winner. 3 months. It took a while. It was a thoughtful 3 months. And they bottle brush. Got it.
I have lots of bottle brush. The hummingbirds love them, as do the sparrows. So very exciting for that. With all.
Thank you, Maggie.
Yeah, love the red flowers. They do shed. They do a lot of red dust. Okay, thank you for that. Anything else from the board? Do I have a motion?
So moved to end the meeting.
Second.
Now.
Third.
Board Member Cluth,
Aye.
Board Member McCall,
Aye.
Vice President Clerk Gardner,
Aye.
and President Bove LaMonica.
Adjourned.
All right.
Thank you.